That is exactly what I would ask people to do when it comes to building a community, building an audience. It's basically broadcasting what you're doing, narrating your story in an authentic way, and attracting these eyeballs. When they come, now you have a opportunity to like really ask, right?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Growth Leap. I'm your host, Michel Gagnon. We talk to pretty awesome business builders who are designing disruptive and meaningful companies. Hello, everybody. Today we are joined by Sharath Kuruganty, a serial maker who's built and shipped 15 plus projects using no-code tools. He went through a successful exit with his SaaS product Shoutout and led and nurtured communities at world-class startups like Product Hunt, DraftBit, and On Deck. He was also head of community and brand at Threado and hosts two podcasts, the Undefeated, Underdogs, and YC Founder Stories. He's now building Guest Lab, an AI research assistant that generates personalized intros, interesting topics, and insightful questions from your guests' LinkedIn profiles. Sharath, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate you for having me.
Finally, we talk. Sharath, you've been building many projects over the years. The most recent is Guest Lab. Can you tell me a bit about the project itself and also maybe walk us through the process from idea to launch and maybe explain a little bit if it was different from your previous projects?
Yeah, so I've built many projects before, like I said. And I think the common theme among all of them is I build it for myself. Like that's like the rule zero. I just look for things in like my own problems or the things I'm doing in a repeated way. I want to find them and build a product around it and hopefully share it online and on the internet and kind of find people who have similar problems. That's exactly how I built everything, like shout out rest of all the products. So this one is exactly the same thing. I am a podcast host, like you said, right? I host 2 shows. In my previous job, I hosted another show. It's like in total of 3 shows. I shipped more than, I don't know, like 120 plus products, episodes. And I am very particular about learning about the guest in a deep, full insight way. So whenever I invite a guest, the thing I used to do is I go through their LinkedIn, go through their personal website, go through the hell out of like tweets and all the shit that they do, and kind of generate 3 things. I want to make a personalized intro. I want to ask like some topics or questions. And that's when I was like, I have like this insights where I have that comes in hand picky, like, okay, there is this keen insight that I want to maybe plug into the episode. So I'm doing that again and again and again and again and again. This is like freaking time taking. And you know this, you are a host as well. So you spend time on research. And one of the things that we do as hosts is to give the time so that the guests will be more welcomed, more inclusive. Like if he or she will be like, okay, I know you. This is not the first time. And most of the times we are meeting the guests for the first time. I'm meeting you for the first time, right? Yeah. But the conversation is going to happen at a deep level because of the guest. So bottom line, I'm like, dude, this is like super hard. And I'm sure everybody else is feeling the same way, at least whoever does the interview style episodes. So I thought like, what if I build a tool around this and use AI to leverage the technology to generate all these things? And it actually worked. It's like I have this collaborate with another technical person. I'm non-technical. And he said, hey, we can use OpenAI. We can scrape LinkedIn. That's an initial start. And we can just like kind of start there. And it really worked. It worked like 75, 80%. I'm not saying that it is going to do research end to end. That's why whenever I talk to folks, kind of Guest Lab is going to give you a heads up. So that was like the idea. And we built it. We shipped the landing page. We got some good attention. We then shipped like an MVP. We built like a wait list. We rolled out the product to the wait list. And yeah, right now we're at like the very tiny numbers, like 10 people paying. They have 10 customers. We have more than, I think, $120, $135 MRR. And yeah, we're just like kind of having fun. We build this for ourselves and put it out and find people like you. Like hosts like you who can take advantage of it.
It's definitely a problem that I've been going through, so I understand the pain. And as I was telling you a bit earlier, I've tried to come up with my duct tape solution, which is not beautiful, but I think you've done a fantastic job, and it's definitely a pain. I'm interested in how you've built it, and you've worked a lot with no-code tools in general. I'm also non-technical, and
Mhm.
I don't know. Have you built, or did you build it differently from your previous no-code experience? Is there with 15 projects in the pocket, maybe you knew some shortcuts, but was the process similar to the past?
No, this time around, this is the first time I would say I directly went to like collaborating with a technical co-founder, if you may call him, like the one I'm collaborating with. The reason is it's such a no-code tools are amazing. It's just that it takes time. It takes time to go to 0 to 1 in a fast way. So that's one reason. I think the other reason I'm intentionally choosing not to fully rely on no code tools is I'm kind of like developing this skill of collaborating with others. So that's another benefit of doing things with others, so that you learn how to communicate, how to pivot, how to basically work, how to especially in a remote setting, you're setting yourself in a position where my end goal is to build my own thing. Period. I want to build my own startup, whether bootstrap raised, I don't know, but I want to be full time founder doing one thing, 24 hours, 365 days. So I'm just putting myself in a position where I'm preparing myself for those when I'm ready for that situation. So it's like kind of, I don't know if people can grasp the basketball reference. You're basically playing, practicing, and practice, practice, practice. And when you enter into a league, you basically are ready. So I'm right now practicing. Everything I'm doing right now is towards practice. So that's one of the reasons I'm kind of not going after building my own thing, building any idea using a no code tool, because I know I can build it. It's just that I will leave the other things which are very important to me. This time around, I just built like a landing page using a no code tool called card.co. That's like the best landing page platform ever. You just like you literally spin off like a simple landing page in 5 minutes. So I've done that, and everything else is like it's all fully coded. And there are complex no code tools that can actually help you build AI oriented products. Like it's not like there is a lack of tools in the market. It's just that I chose not to. So everything else in the past, I was like, I used to build the landing page, validate, build a small MVP, that then collaborate if there is like a signal that it's going to scale. Then if like people are using it and they're like, hey, we need XYZ features and I can't ship it overnight, code can. So I used to like work with others. But now it's like, let me do this route multiple times to learn, and then hopefully this will be like a learning lesson for me.
Great. You sold a shutout for when you reach 30K ARR, and you've recently shared that you applied to Y Combinator with the idea of Guest Lab, I believe.
Yeah.
What's
Mhm.
your end game? Because one of the things I appreciate about you is how you try to balance, I guess, your entrepreneurial or your maker idea, how you combine, let's say, your entrepreneurial endeavors with having some sort of a well-rounded life. We've talked about family earlier before joining.
Mhm.
So what's the end game with Guest Lab and the fact that you've applied to Y Combinator recently?
Yeah, we applied and we got rejected too. Yesterday, I got the email from YC saying that there is no room for us this time. So
That was the first time you were applying?
no, I applied for another product which I worked last year, which we never shipped. That's like the rabbit hole I didn't want to enter this time.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to like a lot of people. I can talk about it as well. It's just it's a wrong way to build. a product, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, with this time, yeah, we applied. The goal was get into YC, not for money, but for network, but for skin in the game. Like really, truly, it allows me and my co-founder, both of us, we used to have jobs. Now we don't have jobs. My co-founder is consulting. I'm thinking of doing consulting because I have to pay my bills. He has to pay his bills. So that's partially they're going to like invest, which will allow us to work on the thing we want to.
Mm-hmm.
And the end game, yeah. Anyway, I see it's like very. I would highly recommend everybody to apply for YC, regardless of where they want to bootstrap, they want to venture, they want to like do whatever they want. It actually allows you to get clarity around what you want to do. So that is like the main important thing. So I learned a ton going through the whole process, the mistakes I made, and I want to like don't do that. I found gaps that are very pretty visible, which I want to avoid if I want to apply for next time, which I will for winter batch. I don't know, anything can happen in this 6 months, but yeah, the goal is. So the way I'm treating YC is the way I used to treat Product Hunt when I started my maker journey. Let me explain what I mean by that. When I started my maker journey, the goal was to build something for myself and launch it on Product Hunt. Period. That's it. There is no revenue. Don't forget about all the other semantics that pull you down. It's just that you build something, you find like 10 people, 20 people, your friends, share it with your like audience, then launch it on Product Hunt. That's get feedback. If it is working, iterate. I'm getting into that more as a founder, which is now my goal is I want to build a startup where there is a problem that exists in the product people want, and 100% from day zero I would charge for the product. That's another thing that I didn't do. Charge for the people so that it gets validated immediately. And the end goal is get into IC. That is like the end goal, because that will actually drive at least me to the end of the course. Like, okay, this is what your goal is. This is what your goal is. You have to do certain things for XYZ. So, and there are like different paths, and I'm not going to get into that. But for me, it's like, I think the network is pretty invaluable, and the exposure is pretty invaluable. And I'm not saying that if you get into YC, everything will happen magically overnight. You just still have to work your ass off. You have to still hustle, which is what I want to do. So long story short, we applied for Guest Lab, and I know for a fact that it's not a big market. So I know probably that might be a reason they rejected. Podcasting is still it's still early, right?
Yeah.
And most of us don't have money, let's be honest, right? So I think most of the podcasters are doing podcasting as a hobby.
Yeah, but it's different
Very
for
few.
me. I'm swimming in a boatload of money.
But yeah, generally I think I would say 80%, 90% people are podcasting out of their passion.
For sure. Yeah.
And I think 10% people have money. Like that 10% have definitely some pretty good money, like HSK type of people who are making a living out of it through sponsorships and all. And it's hard. We know that. We build it for ourselves and put it out. So end game, I don't know. I think it's fully functional now. What I'm thinking now is to keep it as is, not kill it, but it's generating revenue. It has paying customers. Plug it wherever it is necessary, and then take these lessons, build the next thing. So that's where I am right now, in that transition mode. And if we hear like, hey, it's basically, we're pretty much saying that it's going to be in the maintenance mode. It's going to be there. It's fully functional. If someone's like you said, hey, the shit's broken, you need to fix it. Yeah, we'll then fix it. And then it is right there. So we realized we tried our best, and it's really hard. It's hard to get attention of a podcaster who's not making money, asking for money. So we realized that, and it's another lesson, right? Like, we have to go after a market where people have money in their pockets and they are willing to spend. It's not like you have to convince. So with Guest Lab, I have to convince people like, hey, this is the benefit. There is a problem. There is like the value.
Mhm.
So that bit is little intense, especially if I'm working on different things. Maybe it might be a little straightforward if I have like this 24 hours. That's what I want to try with YC.
Mhm.
If I have 24 hours time, maybe it would be a different story. But in general, it's hard. Podcasting is still hard. There is no money there, especially if you're not building a hosting, or if you're not helping people make money. It's hard. So we learned our lesson, but it was like definitely an improvement from the previous project I was mentioning, which we also applied for YC. Yeah, it was like I would say like a 10x improvement from that project to this one. Now take these lessons, go to the next one.
Mhm. I think I agree with you. There is, like, in the podcast world, like, that's what Guest Lab is solving is one of the problems, but there's quite a few others, right? One of them is the actual production, the editing, and the promotion afterwards. So yeah, I think the world and the set of software that are supporting podcasters is a lot better than like 3-4 years ago. I mean the tools I was using was really felt like, I don't know if I'm
Right.
relatively old, but I used to record, like, to do a mix on a cassette, like with
Right.
two radio side by side, and you had to
Right.
play the
Right.
press record on both sides. So when I started doing podcasting, which is not that long ago, but it felt sometimes a little bit like this. Things have improved quite a
Huh.
lot. So I agree with you. I think, though, that there is also another key factor, which is ChatGPT and all the other AI
Mhm.
tools, right? So there is definitely, in my case, I've found myself in a situation where I'm saying, okay, like, do I need 3-4 AI
Mhm.
software or ChatGPT powered subscriptions, right? So sometimes I think there's also, maybe there's a phase where we are right now that makes it a bit more challenging, and I guess maybe confusing also for the people.
Mhm.
One of the things that you've done quite well is building in public and also building a
Mhm.
community, and which is
Right.
something that I really need to work on, practice,
Mhm.
and so that I can eventually go to the NBA. To come back to your initial analogy, what's your trick? You've done that for a lot of other companies. You have your own podcast. I think you went from 0 to 23,000 followers on Twitter/X. What have you learned? Like, what are the key things that we should do?
I think the biggest thing is don't, I would say two things. One is do it with intention. Like there should be like a pure desire to do this. So community building, audience building should come from your heart, not from your mind. If you involve mind, I think then becomes more transactional. So I would say do it with intention and avoid transactional things. Like you give me this, I'll give you that. That's
Yeah.
not going to work. I think that's like the fundamental thing. What is something you should not do is basically be goal oriented. Like if you're starting a thing and your goal is to, like in my case, I want to build a startup, right? So my goal is to build a startup. Let me use community building as a tool or a lever or like a channel. That is also not going to work because you're always going to put that goal and you're doing things for that goal, not for people. You genuinely have to show. That's why I think one of the one of the shortcuts to build a community is building everything in public, because you're telling them naturally what you're doing day to day, week to week, month to month, and sharing those stories, sharing those lessons. It's going to attract people. It's sharing that you're vulnerable, it's going to attract people. Sharing that you won, it's going to attract people. So that is, whenever you attract people, pulling them naturally towards you, that is like you have, like right now you have like a set of eyes looking at you. Now you have an option to like tell them what you want to do. So either they listen or they just walk out, which is fine, right? So that is exactly what I would ask people to do when it comes to building a community, building an audience. It's basically broadcasting what you're doing narrating your story in an authentic way and attracting these eyeballs. When they come, now you have a opportunity to like really ask, right? Hey, I'm building this. Do you have 2 cents you want to share? Hey, guest lab, I'm building this. You're a podcaster. Would you be a paid customer? So you then have an opportunity to really present your ask. And then again, it's all about trying. So it's all about like you trying to position yourself, sell yourself in front of a set of eyes. And the way you bring set of eyes should be organic and natural. So that's what I would define community doing. I think podcast another way. Like you broadcast these stories and you have a set of people. Oh wow, I heard you talking about this to the X person. I was really kind of felt relevant. So now I have your attention. Now that you have audience attention, what would you do? So it is always community building should always be intentional and more intentional, less transactional to me.
But if we try to get a bit more specific, because
Mm-hmm.
community building is a big word, right? And it's a bit
Yep.
like selling, for instance, right? So if you take selling and you try to teach somebody who's not naturally good at
Mm-hmm.
selling, you have to teach them, look, you have to have, let's say, an ideal customer profile. You have to have some
Mm-hmm.
sort of a system to acquire leads, to qualify those leads. And then you need to put the input, which is, I don't know, I'm going to reach out to that many people
Right.
every day to ultimately adjust your messaging and learn from that, but to get the outcomes that you're looking for. How do you actually do, there's the growth work, the sales work, and then there's the community building work. Like, how does that
Right.
fit in your day to day? Do you have some sort of structure around that intention that you mentioned?
I'm not exactly building a community, I'm building an audience. So those two are first thing are separate.
Mhm.
Audience building is one to many. Community building is many to many. It's more of like a dinner table.
Yeah.
Community building is sitting in a dinner table where each person is going to talk with each other, hopefully.
Mhm.
Audience building is you're standing on a stage and there is a set of people looking at you. So I'm more into leaning towards that as of now, this moment. When I used to work for Product Hunt, my previous jobs, I did things that bring people together. So the way you do, let's go into that first, which is the way you do things for building a community is, hey, again, it's always, I think broadcasting is something that you should do in both instances. Like you have to put something out.
Mhm.
Your whether it is an initiative, whether it is something that you want to try, it's content in audience building case. So an idea, for example. So when I was working at Product Hunt did this thing called AMAs, and everybody knows the format. Ask me anything. Like I don't know, like 5, 6, 7 years ago before I joined, and they killed it for whatever reason. I rebrought that. The goal was to bring an expert present in front of a set of makers so that they can talk to each other. And I'm building like a dinner table, and I'm inviting a head seat, and around that head seat there are like a bunch of people sitting. So what I did there was I sparked a conversation, and everybody started talking, not just with the expert but with each other. So do that at scale. That's where you have community.
Mhm.
Do that with 5 people to start with, for example. Next invite to 10. And that the other way to do it is do mastermind sessions, do office hours. These are all like there, but you have to do it with intention. I think that's why I go back to intention. Why are you building this expert? Why are you building this dinner table? Is it where you want to, at the end of the day, they're all they're done with the dinner, they're all going home, and you are like, hey, this is what you need to pay because you're part of dinner table, or hey, let's meet next time. It's so fun having you part of the conversation. I want to do this again. Those two are different things, right?
Mhm.
Those one is transactional, one is intentional. So that's where there are a million things you need to do, or a million ideas, initiatives, community programs. Like ambassador program is something I did. at Product Hunt. The goal was to find champions in these cities and empower them to find more of those people in their communities and build a micro-sized community as part of a larger community. So it goes on and on. That's where that's how you build a community. And on this side, it's like more broadcasting, putting content out, doing things in public. And when they come, they're talking to you, and that's where you also have this chance to like say, hey, you can talk to each other too. Like you can do initiatives like that. So I used to do this. I used to do AMAs on Twitter every Sunday. I used to do that. Now I'm not doing it due to kids and all. But when I started like these AMAs, people come up with the question. I share my insight, and there is someone who's also sharing their insight to them. So there's like a sense of community there, but it's again strictly straightforward audience because they're all hanging out in a place called Twitter, not in a place where you build. Like there is no dinner table there. So I think that's the details, and I can go in depth about if you have any specific question. But overall, I feel that's the two big differences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair enough. And it feels a bit like everybody's building a community. Not everybody. Many companies are trying to build a community. I think one of the things you've said, unless I'm hallucinating, is that not all companies should build a community, right?
Yes.
And if we stick to
100%.
this, because I want to go back to the audience building afterwards, but if we stick to this, what's your take on that? What's your recommendation, and why you think some companies are, may be better positioned to go and build a community?
So there is no criteria. It's all comes to founders, like what they want to do with their startups.
Mm-hmm.
And it's partly how they want to position their product too, right? If you're building a B2B product, you're attracting businesses, but you're attracting decision makers of that particular startup or businesses, right? That's a community right there. If you're a consumer, B2C, that has an organic pull towards your product, now you have like a million set of eyes. You don't need all of them. You need champions. That's where you end up building an ambassador program like how Notion did. So Notion's approach is more consumer centric because everybody can use it. But there are some, like my previous role, I was the head of community, and there it was all about bringing head of communities together because the product is designed for them,
Mm-hmm.
for community teams. So that is like the differentiation. I would say that's like the path, but it's all like not community is not for everybody. If you don't have the time to invest in people, just don't do it. It's plain simple. Because someone else is doing that, someone else is building community, you want to build it, you're signing up for failure.
Yeah.
Or you're signing up for disappointment. So I would rather start asking yourself, do I really need a group of people hanging out together on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis? Forget about community as a big word. Start right there. If the answer is maybe to yes, refine that maybe. Why? Ask yourself, why do you need it? Number 2, do you have the time? Reality check.
Yeah.
Check yourself. Do you have a time to invest 1 hour per day? All you need is 1 hour per day, for example, to just talk to someone. Number 3, do you have really like the money to spend? It's not like you're just willing to spend the time, but you also have invest through doing some, I don't know, like launch a swag program and make them feel special, right? Like send them some goodies that they care about, right? Oh, wow, these guys are caring about us. And number 4, I think, do you want to really build a community of people or community of customers? Because so that you can have first-hand feedback, you can provide great support. So there are so many questions you need to answer. And once you have this yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, you'll know, okay, now I have this clarity. I can just start a support community. That's it. The whole point is my people who pay for my product, they're going to hop on it. If they have feedback, we're going to solve it. If they don't like the service, we're going to provide better service. It's like a tight relationship. So there is a lot of retrospection that needs to happen before even you start bringing people together. Forget about community building for especially for startups, especially around founders. And then comes the question, do I have to scale this? Do I have to build a team around? Like, is there a way I can outsource this because I've built it? So I think the biggest thing I would say is founders should start a community, period. You should not hire someone because you have money so that they can take care of a community you want to build. You're again bound to failure because they don't know what you want. You're hiring, that's good, but at the end of the day, if you're starting your early stage, you have like a 3 million, 4 million seed round, you have money to invest, please don't hire a community lead or anybody. Start with yourself. Take to a point where like there are like 50 to 100 people actively coming together on a monthly basis. Then you have, okay, now I can outsource. So I think that's what I would say. It's not for everybody.
Yeah, and I think what you just said at the end, it's a bit like your company culture, right? It's not something that you can delegate to HR or
Yeah.
somebody else, right? And I'm assuming, or I mean, there's some communities you can go in a unexpected direction, depending on the individuals who are joining, right? So I think I agree with you. You want to make sure that you're kind of setting the right tone at the beginning. Now let's move a bit to audience. And I want to do a bit my Tim Ferriss on this one, which I'm not going to ask you what's your morning routine, but one of the things that I personally find difficult is the structuring the day and the week. I really enjoyed Paul Graham's relatively old article about the maker and the manager schedule. I think this is something that I faced when I started managing an ad tech company with 40 engineers. I was obviously the CEO and had the manager schedule, and
Right.
I would show up on the sixth floor and it's like, hey, what's going on with this? Where's that feature? Which was not appreciated, right? So I've kind of learned to adapt a little bit and also like integrate, like, let's say the good things from both worlds in my day to day. But when you look at your audience building, you're building in public. What do you have? Any have a system or a schedule around that? I'm doing I interviewed Andrew Gazdecki, CEO of Acquire.com, and whenever I reach out to Andrew, like sometimes I have the impression that he doesn't sleep. Like he's super responsive. It's amazing.
Right.
So what's your system, if there's one, to make sure that you're consistent, that you keep providing value, and that you're building an audience that is worth building in a way?
I think maybe I have to have a system, but I don't have one. Short answer is maybe I should build one. I think I'm more of like I'm responding. It's more natural. Till now, everything I did is more kind of I'm responding to it. It's not pre-planned. I tried that. I didn't like it. It's like I used to schedule these tweets. I'm like felt very unnatural, obviously, and I kind of also fell in the trap of writing threads that again didn't work. Maybe it's not for me. That is something you should ask yourself. So there are some set of frameworks everybody offers or everybody at least shares in their building public journey, right? They're also doing things in public, right? So there are these people who are like, hey, this is how you write threads. If you write threads, you might get some attention. All you need to do is digest, try, and see like what is really working for you. So I think that is a system that you need to build, if you ask me. In my case, I felt very comfortable reacting, responding naturally to an idea or a thought or like basically anything that comes to my mind. But yes, I think there is like the other set of people who are like, hey, you have to be very systematic when you build an audience because you're investing time, you're investing ideas, you're investing a lot of other things into it, you're putting effort. maybe again, I think I'm right now in a phase I have more time for the first time in my whole life. So I want to try out like figuring out my system is what I want to build. Like, for example, one of the raw ideas I have is I want to dedicate days to the things I want to do. Like Monday, I just want to work on podcasting. That's it. I want to source guests. I want to do research on my upcoming guests. I will schedule interviews on that particular day and call it a day. Maybe Tuesday, I want to really like fully indulge myself in like, okay, let me do find ideas. I want to build, tinker. So even then, I think I cannot force myself to stop doing other things. That's why I think whatever comes naturally to you. But I think, yeah, no system. Maybe that's why I don't have like 100,000 followers, maybe, which is fine, right? Because a lot many people who started with me, man, they growed insanely crazy. Like some of the people I know have more than I think what 250K, 300K followers. That's insane amount of people. But I'm approaching more of like with intention, doing things. I also want to try out like a systematic, more strategic way. But let's see.
You host two podcasts,
Yeah.
which is a little bit crazy, especially if you said you had a third one when you were doing community work in your previous gigs. The undefeated underdogs and YC founder stories, and they're all guest or interview type podcast,
Hmm.
which as we know it's work. Why did you decide to get into the podcast game, and why did you decide that one was not enough?
So the first one was that actually came out accidentally. Undefeated Underdogs was born within a day or two, and I actually went on a podcast like this. And what I did was the guest was asking, the host was asking questions, was having fun, like just now I'm having fun with you, like talking out authentically. Then I flipped the table and I kind of became host and counter asked questions like naturally. It wasn't planned or anything. It's like jamming at that
You
point.
took over.
And I'm like, whoa, this is very, this is like quite new to me. After that, I was like, I felt very energetic. I'm like, wow, I can ask questions. I can hold a conversation. I think I discovered that tiny skill in me. Then I spent some time like, what if I launch a podcast? Pure, simple, like there is no big plan to it. And I'm an underdog myself. I mean, my whole life, people underestimated me, still underestimating, and I get rejected. Kind of adds me fuel. Like I use rejection as my motivation. Like, okay, if someone says like you can't do it, let me actually try to do it. So I think there is like a relatability if I want to talk to an underdog because I am an underdog. So I felt like, okay, let's actually invite all the underdogs. That's it. That's like the premise of the story. And I think I wrote a letter in on my website. I don't know if you checked. The podcast website has a letter. That's what I want to do because I want to unpack what people are thinking, founders, VCs, creators, everybody. And I just started like interviewing people and I had like so much fun. It was like so fun. And I'm learning something new. I'm kind of like people are putting ideas in my head. I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. Let me actually do it. So I shipped like 60 episodes there. I paused it now. I'm I want to like source maybe like a season 2 type of a thing. Yeah, a lot of things going on in my life. So I'm like, let me take a step back, pause this, and do it. I will be bringing back the podcast soon. Have plans to launch a swag program around underdogs. All that much. So that was purely the idea. It's like why, and later I realized these are all people who have done successful things. So it's like I'm building a network around these people as well. I think that's it. That's the goal. There is nothing. I don't know if it becomes big. I don't care if it becomes big. All I care is I'm having a good conversation with the guest, asking thoughtful questions, get better at asking thoughtful questions. And I think that's it. And the other podcast, when I was applying YC for the first time, I kind of, I know like a lot many people offered, like, hey, let me help you read your application. There are like XYZ things you need to do and all that. But it's not documented anywhere. If you think about it, at least to me, I didn't find it, all the stories that YC founders went through. So I'm like, okay, this is another opportunity again. So I purely did that for myself. Again, the goal is to go into YC, right? So what if I surround myself with YC founders? That was the goal. And I started like YC founder stories. It was not like a very consistent thing, which I have to do it. Now that I have more time, I want to do more episodes on that. But the goal was really like there'll be like two parts. One is a set of questions that they already know, which are standard. Then I dive deep into like questions from their answers, which happened in part one. So again, simple. Like someone who's applying for YC, they can check it out. They can like go through that and maybe learn, and then that's it.
I agree that a podcast is just a great way to build relationships.
Yeah,
And you've talked about being intentional as opposed to transactional. I think podcast is just it's just a great way to connect with
yeah,
people. And in my experience, I agree that I mean I've discovered people because I'm personally what I like about the undefeated underdogs is I like when we interview not extremely well-known people, right? Because everybody in the
right.
end interviews the celebrities, let's say. So
Mhm.
there, sometimes there's very like amazing stories that you discover, and yeah, I was pushed into podcasting because of my partner was saying you should do this. It's great marketing, and I was very reticent because there was a bit back in the days, a bit of a steep learning curve, like in terms of okay, what kind of tech at the beginning, it's something
Mm.
new. How do I set it up? In the end, I think the greatest, let's say, outcome that I'm getting or positive outcome is the relationship building. So I love it.
Yeah,
I don't want to.
absolutely.
I don't want to take too much of your time. I just want to ask a few more questions on the podcast itself. You kind of answered one of the questions that I had, which was you have a specific goals for your podcast, but it seems to be that your approach is again a bit more a free flow. Do
Yeah.
you have any memorable stories or guests that you've received where because you've kind of published quite a few? Is there something, a moment, a guest, a story where you said, "Wow"?
Oh man, that's a good question. Let me think. I think on top of my mind, oh man, I invited so many people. So I invited Larina Fabrega. She's the chief evangelist at Synthesis, this edtech company. She's a teacher. She's she's like content creator as well, who's like educating people about how you should look into education system for your kids and all that. I think she shared a series of things that we normally generally don't talk in the US much about, like how the education system really works. And I think that was a phenomenal episode for me because I actually at that point I had my first kid and I was like totally believed in the school system and this is what I want to do. And she kind of rewired some of the things and she asked about some deep questions of how you want to have your kids think about certain things. So that is definitely one of the awesome things.
What's her name?
Anna Larina Fabrega.
Okay.
So definitely it's like how to raise your kids in an unconventional way. If you want to check it out,
Yep.
highly recommend that episode. Who else? I think I invited, of course, Andrew Gestecki. Awesome. I love that guy. He's just like pure natural. Noah Kagan was on the show. He talked a lot about how to go from zero to one. in a very quick, faster way.
Mhm.
That was one of my favorite episodes. Every episode is my favorite. And like I said, I don't interview people because they have big following or anything. I generally try to put myself in the position where, okay, what is something that they uniquely bring to the table, right? Luis Pereira, he built Audio Pen. That guy is a legend in his own way. He is making 6 figures, 7 figures, if I'm not wrong, through this app. And he's like, I don't want to go full time on it. I just want to have fun with it. I don't know what will happen tomorrow. That level of balance is insane. If you have like a fully profitable product, he's not hiring anybody. He's just doing things just for fun, like purely fun. So he's like 100% intentional. There is no room for anything else. So he's a great guy. Pierre, my good friend, cal.com founder, he shared like amazing story about how open source. Arlen Hamilton is like amazing investor. Her vision is to make or help 1,000 millionaires, which is awesome, right? How to empower like underrated, underrepresented people. Oh, I have like so many awesome people. I'm so fortunate to even have these so many people, like awesome guests on my show. It's like, yeah, everything, every episode is like my favorite. There is so much to learn.
What's the biggest lesson that you've learned over the years in podcasting?
I don't think about what I'm drawing by doing podcasting. I think it's all about like being in awe. I think if you ask me, like being in awe, seeing these people, they all turned obstacles into opportunities, either for themselves or for others. And they did it in a spectacular way. And doing that itself is so inspirational. So I think the biggest, I don't know, it's more of wow, it's possible. Some of the things they did. Take Arlen Hamilton. She was a homeless person once. Now she's running a multi-million-dollar fund, and she invested in like hundreds of founders. So that level of the steep is incredible if you just think about it, right? So I'm just in awe of consistently in awe when I talk to these folks. I think, yeah, the biggest lesson is everybody has a skill to ask great questions. So don't underestimate that. Try it out and do it multiple times and you'll get better at it. So, and there is a ton of benefits if you ask great questions. So that the biggest upside is you will be so clear. You achieve clarity because you're asking the right questions, right? And you're thinking through. You're not doing it, and it helps you make right decisions. Uh, it makes you think better. So I think that's something that's an upside. Like now that I've interviewed so many people, I'm like, okay, let me think through something. It's not like I don't want to jump into it right away. So maybe those are some things I observed.
Yeah, I
Not
think
lessons per se, but yeah, some observations.
one of the things that I've learned myself is to kind of let go as well. I always have my list of questions, but you never know where you're going to end. So sometimes you have a plan and then it goes a different way. Most of the time, it's a more interesting path that you're following. But maybe my last question to you is regarding your future. Big question, big loaded question at the end. But you're at I don't want to say crossroad, but you're at a point where you have a bit more time to think. You've done a
Yeah.
lot of stuff. If we fast forward in the next 12 to 24 months and we talk again and you tell me I don't want to say achieved, but I am where I want to be, what does that look like for you?
I've always wanted one thing. Maybe I'll change that one thing after I achieved that thing, which is I want to be like a full-time founder. I lean more towards building a venture-backed fund, a venture-backed startup than bootstrapping because I did that with Shoutout. It has some amazing benefits. I think, yeah, going, if you ask me like 24 months from now, where I'll be hopefully, touch wood, working on a thing full time with smartest people, like small team, probably 10 or less, remotely distributed. Just focus on what people want and do things in public and have extreme fun, like while doing it. Like I think that's, and getting paid for it, for all of those people who are working with me, getting them paid in an equal way, and just have fun, work with smartest people like investors, bring them, because they don't have money, not just they don't have money, they have more insight that they can add. So bring that type of people, and yeah, ultimately like have fun. And I think that's like the goal, that's like the dream is do your thing full time. Maybe once I achieve that, I might change into something else.
Well, I wish you all that and more. And I want to thank you so much for your time. I'll make sure that people have access to your link to your podcast and all the great episodes that you already mentioned. If people, our audience, wants to reach out to you, X might be the best place to do that.
Yes, Twitter is always the best place, and I will never call Twitter X. It's so fucking weird.
Yeah, I know.
I just So reach out to me on Twitter. My DMs are open. Happy to help. Happy to answer any questions. Whether you want to go through like GTM, you want advice on community building, audience building, anything. Happy to help and share my 2 cents.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sharath, and we'll be in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle, for bringing me on.
Cheers. Thanks again for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, and as usual, you can find the show notes at stunnanup.com.